Upfront and Outspoken with Bob Williams. If you love the Constitution,
man is not free unless government is limited.
If you love freedom,
as government expands, liberty contracts.
If you believe in personal responsibility, if you believe America is still the greatest nation on earth, then get ready for an experience you'll never forget. This is Upfront and Outspoken. Here's your host, Bob Williams.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag, rule their red, white, and blue.
And welcome back. This is Upfront Outspoken. Of course, I'm your loudmouth host, Bob Williams, on this, Tuesday morning. And my guest is being very patient. He's on the phone with me right now, and we're going to be talking about something that has completely fell off the radar. I am on the phone with me, of course, is our own, very own Ed Tyll, host of the Ed Tyll Show. You hear it right here, starting at the bottom of the hour, all the way till 4 o'clock this morning. Good morning, Ed. Glad to have you on board. Ed. I don't know. What do? We lose Ed? I guess we did.
No, you got me. I'm right here.
Here I thought we lost you.
I was saying good morning, Matt and Savannah. It's a pleasure to be on the Today Show.
Oh, okay. Wow. What can
hello to Al Roker. I miss him. All the people. Carson Daly. I love everybody. Oh, this is not the Today Show.
No, this is not. Wake up. This is Upfront Outspoken. I'm that loudmouth.
I forgot. I used to listen to the Today Show. I gave it up as soon as you began Upfront and Outspoken. I haven't heard the Today Show in years. Nice to be with you.
Hey, great to have you on board, Ed. Hey, everybody is talking about ISIS. They're talking about the Ebola. They're talking about all that crap. I don't want to get into that. I want to get your insights about something that has literally fallen off the radar, and I want to get your insights as to why Hamas is no longer in the news.
Well, it's funny. Just before we went on the air, you were talking about this interview the other day with Jonathan Wolfman. And the Hamas party, I know you're well aware of it, but you have to follow Middle Eastern politics, to really know who the different players are. Hamas, it started out as rebels. They became a political party. But ever since they've been a political party, the way they operate in their, quote-unquote legislative branch is very thuggish. It really is a military, intimidating force rather than, what the public relations say, that they're there to offset Israel, they're there to, make a place for the Palestinians, et cetera, et cetera. What they've really been has been a military instigator in that area, and as you say, they get cover now because of groups like ISIS. A very interesting statistic we carried yesterday on the show: 7 out of the 10 most active terror groups in the world are Islamic. Hamas doesn't even rank with them because the other guys have grabbed so much of the publicity and so much of the beheading is the new thing. Right? Years ago, they used to rain rockets down on an Israeli school, on an Israeli public building, or they would attack a pizzeria, or they would attack a school bus. So now they've upped their ante, and they're getting cover from the graphic nature of ISIS. That's how I see them.
The thing is Netanyahu appeared in front of the UN, about 2 weeks ago now, and their concern was that Hamas is indeed, number one, a terrorist group, and then they also dealt with Iran, but I want to focus on Hamas. Would Hamas be just as much of a threat if they had the funding that ISIS has?
Well, ISIS's funding right now is unusual. The answer to your question is yes. No one's had this kind of money before because, as everybody knows now, they've taken over oil. They actually are selling oil on the black market, which is lowering the price of oil. I'm sure you've seen in the last, 10 or 11 trading sessions, oil has been soft for this very reason.
Right.
Our number one friend in the Middle East when it comes to oil is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is finally feeling the presence of this ISIS control of oil. Hamas, on the other hand, works very much like, trying to see what, in my mind, what would be analogous to it here in the United States. I really can't think of the United States a political party, but maybe it's kind of like Brent Lingel's friends there. They're originally on the periphery, but when the government is corrupt in their opinion, then they are elevated by that. So every time a fringe party in the United States sees the Democrats or the Republicans have a scandal or a real setback, they get excited. They think that they're going to move up in the rankings. Hamas did this because they control a very small geography. So the difference between them and ISIS is they believe the same things when they go to bed at night. Hamas really feels that they've earned themselves the title of political party, even though in any country like Israel or the United States, they wouldn't be considered a legitimate party. But it's a hybrid of violent intimidation and sitting in a government function.
Interesting analogy.
That's what I think you and I are old enough to remember Hamas long before they were a political party.
Right.
Long before they had any credibility at all. Under Menachem Begin and some of the, Bibi Netanyahu, who is now, of course, the Prime Minister of Israel. When I began my talk radio career, he was the Israeli consulate office. He was the head guy, pick up the phone, and I would interview him at like 10 o'clock at night. He would do interviews 9:30 of the evening. The guy was tireless if you wanted to talk about Israel. And in 1983 and 1984, he was warning that Hamas would become establishment and that it would be someday, in his prediction, like fighting a nation state. He was absolutely correct.
Right. The thing is that caught my eye when Netanyahu was speaking was the fact that we know Hamas fired all these rockets at Israel, over 3,000 rockets, and if it wasn't for the Iron Shield, there'd been more fatalities in Israel. And we also know that he was very aggressive at the very start of the offensive against Hamas, and I'm going to use it. He wasn't going against basically the Palestinians. He was targeting Hamas. In your judgment, in your view of the geopolitical system over there, did he go far enough, or because of the pressures of other countries, did he pull back?
Well, wow, that's a tough one to know. I believe political pressure made him pull back. I believe that, look, everybody serves a purpose in a neighborhood, and everybody serves a purpose in an international neighborhood. Israel's accepted the responsibility of always being aggressive enough that it deters everybody except the crazy from attacking them. Lots of people don't agree with what happened in 1948. Even many Americans will sit around the living room and still lament how Israel got its country and the Palestinians, it was a Donnybrook. It was kind of a jump ball. And anybody who was aggressive sucked up what intended to be Palestine. inception, has played the role of, I'm going to tell it to you a little more unvarnished. I'm going to tell you the real truth. I'll tell you what's going on in the street. Hamas would say, Israel gets a pass. They're treated like a civilized democracy when, truthfully, they're down in the mud with us, street fighting for the Middle East. So Israel, I think, deliberately speaks provocatively, truthfully, unvarnished, knowing it will be yanked back by the international community. Hamas, I believe, is enjoying some of the same freedom now. If you have ISIS and ISIL and old Al-Qaeda guys out there saying the most extreme things, then Hamas can lay back, let them take the heat, and under the radar, I think was your phrase in the beginning, from a position under the radar, they can more effectively undermine Israel and its security, which I believe Hamas's goal is to get rid of Israel. Iran's goal is to get rid of Israel.
So right now, if I interpret what you're saying correctly, is Hamas is basically using this lull as a means to not only rearm but re-strategize what they intend to do with Israel.
Correct. Look, I believe they're part of that general idea that over the long period of time they will surround, choke off Israel. I think they have two strategies toward the United States. The most desirable is they would like to see the United States, as it changes demographically, abandon Israel. They would be willing to make a bet with you 50 to 100 years from now, America will rethink this symbiotic loyalty. Even though Obama is rough on them and some presidents aren't as respectful, when it comes to the war room, the Secretary of Defense, we consider them an ally, and as upset as they might get at us, they consider us the same.
Well, the other quote, you brought up an interesting point, which Leon Panetta brought up. When you were saying about our government, Panetta brought up the fact that he feels that our government is right now being run on a crisis-to-crisis basis, with Hamas no longer in sight, at least temporarily. Do you concur with what Panetta said, that the situation in ISIS is therefore taking away from what we should be doing or should not be doing in the Middle East with Israel and Hamas?
He's being called disloyal because he's attacking, in the book, a sitting president. I believe in this, but it's very controversial. I understand the other side's objections. They say he can be inadvertently revving up the bad guys. The fact that he would come out and say Obama has lost his way. I think the toughest thing he said about this president is that President Obama is a very bright man. I think he did very well on his SATs and his law boards. I believe he would still test very highly as an academic. But I think Leon Panetta's criticism of the president is accurate. The job requires both wisdom, but the ability to...
Well, kind of like the Teddy Roosevelt philosophy.
Well, right, but I wanted to keep it updated because I know the world is more complicated. I wanted to say that Barack Obama doesn't have the willingness to act once he's completed the equation. He's from a generation that after they finish working the problem, they like to sleep on it a day or so, or put more distance between.
Yeah,
I believe this has been anticipated.
But the thing is that by as you say, sleeping on it, that gives the opposition the opportunity to advance. I mean, we've seen it already happen with ISIS. In fact, even after the airstrikes, they're now changing their strategy. And I agree with the fact that, Leon Panetta is not being critical of our current administration, but showing, some of the cracks in the armor that we're led to believe. And by only addressing one issue at one time, are we not, in fact, losing face in the geopolitical system?
Well, I guess Obama is stretching the system in a direction that a guy like Panetta, who has seen many chief executives, spent a lot of time in Washington, whether it was just his time in Congress or his service in the executive branch, he really knows how this job goes. I think Obama has been determined. I heard another analysis last evening that said the same thing. He seems determined to make a change in how presidents operate. He seems determined to cut his own path, even when he has some very strong disagreement in the room. One of the reasons I think Panetta wrote the book was nobody likes to be that high up on the power chain, do the kind of work they do, manage these huge government bureaucracies like the military, and literally be ignored. To go in there to meeting after meeting and say, this is my strong opinion, my strong advice to you. And he said Obama's style is, at the end of your presentation, the president just gives his. And he doesn't openly conflict with you. He just tells you at the end what he wants. And Panetta says, it sounds like the same thing he said before you spoke. Well, this is going to make somebody write a book. This is going to make somebody speak out. In America, I was raised, you don't do this because you undermine the guy in office.
Right.
But if the issues are this high, if the stakes are this high, then a guy like Panetta who's sitting there watching this miscalculation, watching a blind eye being shown to a real enemy, I think there's an element of patriotism. Panetta did. Peggy Noonan ripped him. And Peggy Noonan's a Republican, worked for Reagan, and I love her. She said his book was cheap and tawdry in the way it attacked. All right, I get it. Some people believe in a regal presidency. I never have. I don't buy it. I don't buy titles that can confer more than humans normally deliver Monday through Friday.
Now, I have one final question because I know you got to do your prep for your show coming up here in a few minutes. And so this will be a real, it might be a tough question, but, it's got to be asked. If you were in President Obama's shoes, and this is a hypothetical, we know that's not going to happen, but if, for example, you were indeed in President Obama's shoes, and you had this all on your plate, what would you do?
Well, I did not like the methods of George Bush W, but I did agree with the general posture of George W. Bush. In other words, it's kind of what I said earlier, but I would apply it to Obama, even that he's reluctant to do this. I would say, Mr. President, you don't have to go out there and fake it and pretend you're a tough guy and start pounding the table. But this idea of making people sure that you are going slow, I think you got to backpedal that. I think you could go slow, but you can't say what your speed is. You must give the appearance that you're galloping to the rescue. And then at the last minute, you're the one who decides if they're going to pull the trigger on somebody like bin Laden. But in those days, it was early on when his experts were very aggressive. I think he slowed down his team. I think it's like when a football team is taken over by a new coach, and a couple of years later, you say, that team is playing a different style of football. And I think his mistake is, and you asked me what I would do, is I would be alpha, aggressive posture, as opposed to he seems reluctantly to be, putting up his dukes to the enemies. I would make sure they knew that I was always on guard. And then maybe I would bomb as selectively as he does. but it's the posture, I think, that answers your question.
I think you're right. I know, Ed, our time is up here, and I know you've got to get ready for your show. My guest, of course, on the phone with me, none other than Ed Tyll. You hear him here weekdays, Monday through Friday, from 7:30 a.m. all the way up until 4 p.m. Thanks again, Ed, for coming on, and hope to chat soon.
Well, Bob, I'm a big fan of the show. Thanks for having me. And now, what was this talk about me being on? What, I'm supposed to host some show next? Is that what?
Yeah.
That I'm.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
let me get right on that. All right, man. Have a great day.
All right, you too, Ed. Take care. And that was. What can I tell you? He's one of a kind. That's Ed Tyll. He'll be with you coming up here shortly. And with that, it is time for me to get the hell out of here. Enjoy your day. Until tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., this is Bob Williams. Take care of yourselves.